All right, so Friedrich Nietzsche. And I had you read his stuff on art, at least an excerpt from his stuff on art, because again, I think that everything else Nietzsche does later, primarily his work in ethics and so forth, ties back to his work in art. He wanted to be an artist. He himself was a failed artist. He wrote some symphonies. Nobody cared. They weren't any good. He was friends with artists like Richard Wagner. And so there is this interesting connection. He's writing in the 1870s, 1880s. This interesting connection between Nietzsche and the Nazis of the 1930s and 40s. And part of that connection is through Heidegger, whom we've talked about before. Heidegger heavily influenced by Nietzsche and his philosophy, and so then he kind of brought Nietzsche to the Nazis in a weird way. But the Nazis loved art, especially great art, and especially art that talked about the greatness of the Germanic peoples, which is what Wagner was about. Wagner's most famous work, Lohengrin, Ring of the Nebula, and so forth, which was this huge 14-hour-long opera about German myths, Helga, and you name the stereotype German name and it's in there, Siegfried and so forth. I prefer the 5-minute Bugs Bunny version, but that's just me. And so that was Nietzsche's best friend for quite some time, Richard Wagner. So the Nazis loved Wagner because of the German things. There's a connection there as well. And again, they're not contemporaries at all. I mean, there's a 50, 60-year difference in time. But and as we'll see with Nietzsche, there's a lot of other points of connection between Nazism and Nietzsche. But first, I need to dispel a couple of Nietzsche myths. First, many people think that Nietzsche is a nihilist. Nietzsche is not a nihilist. Nietzsche is attempting to speak out against nihilism. Nietzsche thinks that in some ways Christianity is nihilistic, and he's trying to speak out against that. And Nietzsche is well versed in the language of Christianity, in the Judeo-Christian language. His father was a pastor, a Christian minister, and he saw things like the hypocrisy of the ministry and of Christianity generally speaking. Nietzsche once famously said that Christianity digs a hole, pushes you into it, and then shows you the way back out. Of course, without Christianity, then there's no hole, right? He is not a nihilist. He's attempting to overcome nihilism. He's just doing it in a different way than Christianity goes about doing it. Another myth, Nietzsche was an existentialist. Now, if by existentialist we mean what Cottingham means, someone focused on matters of existence, then okay. But if we mean it in the technical sense, that existence precedes essence, rather than essentialism, essence precedes existence, then Nietzsche is not an existentialist, he's an essentialist. Artists are born, they're not made. They have something special about them. There's some special insight, special foresight that they have that the rest of us just don't. That's why they seem weird to the rest of us. Geniuses seem weird to normal people. They're too out in front, they're too avant-garde, they're too different, they're too weird, because the rest of society hasn't yet caught up to where they are. And so Nietzsche is actually going to use Christian language to describe that. He's going to talk about the herd. And so most folks are like sheep, especially Christian folks. And again, Christians claim to want to be sheep that follow a good shepherd and all of that. There's a herd. There's safety in numbers. A flock of sheep, there's safety there. A wolf is not going to attack a flock of sheep. Instead, the wolf is going to wait for one sheep to break out on its own. Now, the sheep, then, by breaking away, is risking its life. Nietzsche says, multiplies 1,000-fold the risks that come with life, because this one is susceptible to be eaten by a wolf. Life itself could devour this sheep, because this sheep is taking a chance. There's really only two options for this sheep. Either it succeeds or it fails. That's it. The flock is okay being okay. They're content. They're okay enough. So think all the way back to Plato, right? Most folks stay in the cave because it's okay enough. They never break free. The chains never fall off. They never get dragged out to have this epiphany. And remember, for Plato, the born philosopher is the one who can have this epiphany. For Nietzsche, really, he's talking about the born artist. Look, you can go to CCAD, they can teach you how to draw and how to paint. It doesn't make you an artist. It doesn't give you whatever that special it thing is that creates great art. So if this sheep succeeds, then he has a great meadow all to himself. He doesn't have to share. But that makes this flock very uncomfortable. So the flock wants to go out and get this sheep and bring him back into the rest of the herd. But in order to do that, it's got to go out and get that sheep. There's progress, right? There's moving forward, moving upward, because they have to go to where he is. And this usually takes, I don't know, 10 to 20 years to really appreciate great artists and what they've done. Van Gogh sold one painting his entire life. And yet, you can't really tell the story of the history of Western art without including Van Gogh. And that's what Nietzsche's talking about here. Nietzsche's talking about art, and great art that's going to survive, that's going to outlive the artists themselves. That the soul is not immortal. That's crazy talk. God is dead, and we have killed him, is the rest of the quote from Nietzsche. God is dead, and we have killed him. When he's talking about God, he's talking about the concept. There never was an actual entity anywhere, some type of paternalistic figure watching over everything we do and judging all of it accordingly. Oh, that's good, and that's evil, and that's right, and that's wrong, and all of that nonsense. No, 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 no. This was created by losers, quite frankly. By losers. And Nietzsche here says, look, who are the losers? The Jewish people. They lost all the time. So in order to help themselves feel better about their loserdom, they created this concept of God who's going to reward them for losing and punish people who win. Because those who win by any means necessary. It's about breaking away and being above the rest of the herd. It's about being an overlord or a superman amongst other men, an Ubermensch. These guys are das Man, the they. Right? You hear people all the time, they say this, they say that, they, who they mean? Most of society. Who's most of society? Loser sheep. So here again, another connection with the Nazis then, right? The Jewish people are the problem, not the solution. The Jewish people are holding back the greatness of the German peoples or something along those lines, scapegoats and all of that, which it's interesting, they were scapegoats. Scapegoat actually is a Jewish tradition thing. You cast all of the wrongdoings of the people onto a goat and then exile it and send it out of town so that all of your wrongdoings are along with it. That's where the term scapegoat comes from. Anyway, so there's that kind of anti-Jewish connection as well. And Nietzsche's like, look, man, we're animals first and foremost. Right? That's what he's getting at with the Dionysian Apollo thing. Not as clearly in this excerpt, but in the larger work, Birth of Tragedy, that we're animals, and we've gotten too far away from that. We've become too Apollo-like and not Dionysian enough. That we've become over-intellectualized. Nietzsche here in some ways is laying the groundwork for Freud. And so Nietzsche's saying, not in these words, but these are the words that Freud's going to use, look, we've allowed the superego to overtake the id, and that's a problem. Because it keeps all of us here in the herd. It attempts to punish people who try to rise above and be different. It tries to punish them socially, right? They're socially not accepted. Oh, that's too weird. You can't do that. Think about the story of Prometheus, which Nietzsche's a huge fan of. So we talked before about Sisyphus. That's Camus' go-to, right? The rock pusher. Nietzsche wants to talk about Prometheus, who stole the fire from the gods. Do you know who didn't want him to do that? Everyone else. Everyone else was so afraid that if he fails, they'll all be punished. Prometheus had this internal drive, this internal compulsion, that he knew he was going to succeed, right? These folks, losers, are always afraid of what if you fail. Winners don't think about failure. They think about when I succeed. They're concerning themselves with legacy. They're not concerning themselves with here and now in the day-to-day sense. They're concerning themselves with laying the groundwork for greatness, because the soul is not immortal. And so the closest you can get to immortality is to create something great enough that it survives. Van Gogh, Beethoven, Mozart, Shakespeare, all of these greats. And what's interesting is that there's this weird connection between the artist and the artwork, right? We don't say we're going to the art museum to see the paintings by Van Gogh. We say we're going to the art museum to see Van Gogh or the Van Goghs, right? That we presume that there's a part of them, part of their soul or something that's imbued into the artwork, that we're going to see aspects of them even though they've been gone for hundreds of years. It's why it's so important to some people to figure out who the heck was William Shakespeare anyway. Right? We have these plays, we have some insight into who he was, but we don't really have a full history, we don't really have a full picture. Was he a member of the court, the royal court? Was he really just this hack playwright who suddenly was great? Did he, like Robert Johnson, sell his soul to the devil or something along those lines? Right? We're intrigued. We're intrigued by greatness because most of us aren't. Right? It's why celebrities and so on and so forth, there are articles written about them. There are, think now about the current state of things. There have been so many people that I've talked to and heard from and so forth who love the fact that, you know, since everyone's on lockdown or whatever, but we can actually see like one room of John Krasinski's house or whatever. Like, we're getting insight into their lives in a way that we never did before. And so for a lot of people, that's really exciting. Wow, we can actually like see greatness. Kobe Bryant, right, when he died, stories came out about how fascinated he was by the concept of greatness, that he would go to great television shows and talk to the actors and the directors and so forth to figure out what is it that makes this show great? What is it that makes this musical artist great? What is it that makes this great? He was compelled, he was driven by greatness itself, not just greatness on the basketball court, though that drove him as well, right? So that's why he did a short film that won an Oscar or whatever, right? He was consumed by greatness, just like, as we'll see with Nietzsche, the artist is consumed by the art itself. The art overtakes them. The art itself, let's talk about, I don't know, the form of beauty, for instance, is merely working through the artist. The important part's not who the artist is. The important part is the art that's working through them, this art that speaks to some type of universality, not particularity. Great art is great because it's universal. It says something about the human condition itself. So we can see here the connection between Nietzsche and Heidegger. Heidegger was talking about the universal human condition. We can see the connection between Nietzsche and someone like Hegel, right? Hegel, this absolute is sort of working through us, right? We are not the absolute, but we're aspects of the absolute. You also get the artwork connection there as well, right? And sort of the inevitability that Hegel talks about, right? That's sort of here in Nietzsche as well, right? That the art is going to find an outlet somewhere. You just got to be open to it. And what's interesting then for the artist, like the shaman specifically, right? It's almost as if they go to some transcendental level, that while they're producing their art, it's like they're not really present. That art really is just using them as a conduit. The shaman is not the important part of the ceremony before going to hunt the animal. The important part of the ceremony is this connection that the shaman has with the animal that they're going to hunt. This connectedness, all of nature coming together. And the shaman is going to seem crazy to an outsider. They're not going to understand what's going on while the shaman is in this other plane of existence. Like an artist is in another plane of existence when they're creating their art. It seems crazy to the rest of us because we're not great. And we're using art here as the example, but this fits for anything, right? The genius business person, their ideas are going to seem crazy to the rest of us, right? Jeff Bezos was crazy. Steve Jobs was crazy. Richard Branson, crazy. What's his name? The Tesla guy. Elon Musk, crazy. Think about musical artists. They're crazy. Prince, Lady Gaga, Madonna, David Bowie. They're crazy. They're crazy because they don't follow along and do what the rest of us do. That's crazy. And it is crazy until it works. When the crazy stuff they say actually comes to fruition, it's no longer crazy, then it's genius. It's insightful. It's wow, they knew this was coming before it actually happened. So I want to quote two songs which are seemingly very far apart from one another. But if you actually look at the lyrics, they are not. They are very much the same, and they are both very much in keeping with what Nietzsche is talking about. The first one is from Kanye West. I'm only going to quote the first stanza, the first verse from his song, Power. And power is going to be a reoccurring theme for Nietzsche. It's this quest for power, this will to power. And by power, what we're talking about is this legacy, this greatness thing. And you can't allow others to hold you back, right? The rest of the sheep are going to try to hold you back. What if you fail? You can't worry about that. You can't worry about everybody else in society. You got to worry about you. Prometheus has to go try to steal the fire from the gods because he knows he's going to succeed. So this is Kanye. I'm living in that 21st century, doing something mean to it. Do it better than anybody you ever seen do it. Screams from the haters got a nice ring to it. I guess every superhero need his theme music. Haters are gonna hate. Kanye's like, look, I'm not worried about what these loser sheep are saying. I'm producing greatness here. And Kanye is a great example here because either he is great, that people will continue to listen to Kanye West music 200 years from now, or he's delusional. He's crazy, he's wrong, and when he dies, so does his music. There's a whole lot of music out there that people listen to now that our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids will have no idea ever existed. Shakespeare was not the only one writing plays when he was writing plays. His is just the only one that survived. It's the only one that's great. They survive because they're great. They're not great because they survive, from Nietzsche's perspective. So that's one song, Kanye West. And there's an entire seminar at Oberlin College, I believe it is, talking about the connections between Nietzsche and Kanye. Great stuff. There's a book out that's kind of a synopsis of a lot of the lectures and so forth. Okay, the other song, I'm going to ruin some people's childhood here. Let It Go, from Frozen. It's interesting that in Frozen 2, then, she also kind of dismisses Let It Go or whatever. But it's become very iconic for a lot of people. And so I'm going to read it because it's way out of my range vocally. The snow glows white on the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation. It looks like I'm the queen. Look, this Ubermensch thing might seem isolating and lonely because you're chasing something other people don't understand. Other people aren't going to get it. You're not worried about them. You're not worried about cave dwellers, to go back to Plato. You're worried about creating stuff that's going to lead other people to have epiphanies. That's what you're worried about. You're worried about greatness, leaving a legacy. LeBron James, he's not worried about Steph Curry and KD and all those guys. He's worried about a legacy. He says he's chasing a ghost to Ward number 23 in Chicago. He's trying to be the greatest of all time, and not just the greatest basketball player. Again, this goes beyond basketball. The greatest global icon of all time. Former President Barack Obama, when talking about Michael Jordan, said Michael Jordan is the Michael Jordan of all Michael Jordans. If you're the greatest at anything, you're considered the Michael Jordan of that thing. Who's the Michael Jordan of all of those? Michael Jordan. LeBron James is trying to be the LeBron James of LeBron Jameses. He wants to change the script, leave a different legacy, not be one of the greatest, but be the greatest. Opening schools in Akron, so on and so forth. Forbes magazine a couple of years ago, LeBron James was like the 7th or 8th most influential person in the world. He was above the Pope. Anyway, so Let It Go. Kingdom of Isolation, looks like I'm the queen. The wind is howling like the swirling storm inside. I couldn't keep it in. This id thing, this greatness thing, this power, I can't keep it in anymore. Heaven knows I've tried. Remember, for Nietzsche, God is dead and we have killed him. We've finally killed the concept of God. We don't need all of these rules and so forth holding us back. We can achieve greatness. We can pursue greatness. We can be great. We can leave a legacy. By killing God, we have replaced God. This is humanism. We're in charge here. We decide our own destiny and fate and all of that. We make our own decisions. We decide what's right and wrong for each of us. Furthermore, not only have the artists killed God, because not a lot of great musical artists or visual artists are God believers, because with God comes rules and they have to break the rules to be great. Rule followers get forgotten. They're part of the herd. But also, wait, I had a train of thought there. Artists, science, right? Scientists, these scientific breakthroughs. God was nice as a stand-in for all the stuff we couldn't explain, that we couldn't understand. But now, even in the 1870s and 1880s, when Nietzsche's writing this stuff, he's like, look, science has come along enough that we can now replace this concept of God, right? It's this thing that science hasn't explained yet, but eventually will. He believes in the progress of science as well. Science, art, all of these things are progressive movements that are necessarily going to progress. Again, the Hegelian lineage. And even Stephen Hawking, Brief History of Time and all that, he uses the word God. But by that, he doesn't mean some supernatural power or force or anything. He just means the thing science hasn't explained yet. It's a placeholder. But anyway, back to Elsa. Couldn't keep it in, this power thing that everyone else wanted me to keep in. Right? Remember, mom and dad, Elsa's mom and dad, wanted her to conceal it, hide it. They locked her away so that nobody knew. Of course, this happens after her powers have been revealed accidentally. She was trying to hide them again. Didn't work. Heaven knows she's tried to hide them. She's tried to keep these powers inside. It didn't work. So we also need to keep in mind what she's doing as she's seeing this. She's running away from the herd and producing art while she's doing it. She's building her ice castle while she's singing this. Heaven knows I've tried. Don't let them in. Don't let them see. Them. Don't let the they see. Why? Because they're going to be freaked out. They are going to be scared out of their wits. Why? Because they don't have power. People without power fear people who have power. Why? Well, Nietzsche goes on to say in some of his ethics works, because people who don't have power would love to have power. They resent those who have it, and they fear those who have it because they knew what they would do if they had that kind of power. They'd take advantage. They'd be the puppet masters instead of dragging people out of the cave. Don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good girl. You always have to be. Good based upon what? Based upon society's ideas of ethics. Conceal, don't feel. Don't let them know. Well, now they know. The cat is out of the bag. Now they know I've got power and they don't. And what are they going to do? They're probably going to hate me for it. Haters are going to hate. The screams from the haters, though, eventually will be my theme song. Let it go, let it go. What is she letting go? All of the past, all of this garbage, all of this herd stuff, all of these rules that she had to follow before, she's letting it go. And what the artist does when they let it go is they create great art because they're not worried about the rules anymore. They can follow their id. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, turn away, slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. Let it go, let it go. It's funny how some distance makes everything seem small. If we're talking about this legacy perspective, then these minute details of the day-to-day seem pretty small and insignificant. Then I'll come up again with Russell for next time. So by the way, read Russell's Idealism in a Godless Universe for next time. It's back in the 12th section, in part 12. And he talks about, look, when tragedy strikes, then that's when all these minute things, the day-to-day, become insignificant. Distance makes everything seem small. Fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. The only reason that someone who's great wouldn't break out from the herd is fear. Nietzsche's like, look, man, you got to overcome that fear. Fear is for losers. You're a winner, doggone it. So stop letting everyone else dictate your life. Stop letting everyone else decide for you. Who cares what they say? Fears that once controlled Elsa, now they can't get to her at all. She's got nothing to fear anymore. Right? Everyone now knows. The great fear was, oh my goodness, what if everyone finds out? Now they have. All right. So I watched Onward a couple of days ago. And there's the scene, I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. There's the scene where the younger brother is going across the invisible bridge that he's creating as he goes. And, or no, right before that, right, he's afraid. Because there's this chasm he's got to cross. He's got to build this invisible bridge. He doesn't know if he can do it or not. There's fear there. He thinks, what if I fail instead of when I succeed? So his big brother is there to encourage him and tell him, no, you got this. You can do this. But he ties a rope anyway. And so with the first step then, because he fears instead of believes, down he goes. Thankfully the rope is there. He comes back up and he's like, I fell. See, I told you I couldn't do it. The big brother says, yeah, but now you know the worst that can happen. And you're still fine. So go do the thing. Interesting. I was watching with my sister-in-law and her son, and during that point I said, And so she told her son, she was like, you know what that means, right? And her son was like, no, I don't know what that means. She says, that means Uncle David's going to use that in the class. That's what that means. And so here, I just did. She was right. All right, so where are we here? The fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. It's time to see what I can do, to test the limits and break through. Right, let's break these rules. Let's see what happens. There's no right, no wrong. We're talking about ethics here now. Not just art, but also ethics. These things really are one and the same thing. There are rules, and you can choose to follow them or choose to break them. Now, Nietzsche also goes on to say, look, everyone knows deep down whether they're a winner or a loser. The winners should break the rules because they can succeed. The losers should follow the rules because otherwise they'll fail. And failure sucks. So you should just be content being part of the herd, otherwise you'll get eaten by sheep. But the winners shouldn't be content with this. And all of society suffers if the winners are content with this, because then Prometheus never goes and steals fire from the gods. Steve Jobs never does what he does with regards to computers and all of that stuff, right? He said once that the computer will be more common in the home than a blender. That was crazy talk because computers were the size of a house. But came to fruition. He was right. All right. No right, no wrong. We're talking about ethically here, no right and no wrong. No rules for me. I'm free. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about freedom. If God is dead and we have killed him, now we have freedom. Before we had God, no, you should do that, you shouldn't do that. No freedom there. And so Nietzsche thinks that he's upholding the dignity of man by freedom through power. Russell's going to completely disagree, but more on that next time. My power flurries through the air into the ground. This whole song is about artistic power. Creation is power. Think again about the concepts of God. God as creator. Why? Because that's pretty freaking powerful. The artist can create stuff that speaks to the universal human condition. That's pretty freaking powerful. There's a power there. They can break away from the herd and not get eaten by the sheep because they succeed. That's pretty powerful. power, power, power. The will to power. And this freedom thing really is, at least what Schrappe thinks Nietzsche's getting at with the eternal recurrence thing. He's not saying time actually repeats itself. Okay? He doesn't think we're at the end of Hegel's cycle and all that stuff. No, no. He's saying you need to live your life without regrets. Live your life as if you would make that same decision again for all of eternity. If that same decision came up over and over and over again, be content with the decision that you made, such that you would do it again and again and again. But anyway, my power flurries through the air into the ground. My soul is spiraling. Elsa's soul, who she is as a person, is spiraling in frozen fractals all around. Her artistic creation is an extension of who she is. There is a connection between the artwork and the artist. They're one and the same thing. Her soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around. And we talked before about self-portraits and so on and so forth. And as that's happening, one thought crystallizes like an icy blast. I'm never going back. The past is in the past. Can't live life in the rear view. You gotta live life through the windshield. Be forward thinking, forward looking. That also has to do with this eternal recurrence, no regret thing. And Nietzsche's the one who said, Kelly Clarkson stole it from Nietzsche, Nietzsche's the one who said that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Right? This sheep is not going to get eaten by wolves, but it may get attacked by wolves. It may have some scars. It may not look like they're winning in the moment. But those minor losses along the way make them stronger and lead to the greater winning at the end. Everyone loves a good redemption story. Everyone loves a good, pull yourself up by your bootstrap story type deal. Right? The person who looked like a loser who ended up being a winner. One of my other favorite movies that points to this is the movie Sing. And I'm still waiting for Sing 2 because I still don't know if Buster Moon is actually a winner or a loser. Right? The crux of the movie, the climax of the movie, after the theater's been destroyed, and Buster crashes at his best friend Eddie's house. And by the way, Eddie's a friend, right? Okay, we're gotta wash cars again. Here I am. I'll drive for you. So anyway, but right before that happens, right, theater's been destroyed. All over the news is Buster Moon, charlatan, failure, so on and so forth. Remember, the theater was successful. Then it wasn't. Right, and this was Buster's last-ditch attempt to save the thing. Instead, the actual physical building was destroyed. And so all of these outcasts come and they're like, we're still going to do the show, right, Buster? Buster's like, have you not been paying attention? I am who they say I am. They are right about me. That's who I am. A loser. I'm a failure. Go do whatever. And he tells Mina the elephant, who's afraid to sing in public and in front of people. He says, look, the real reason you're afraid is because you know deep down, you're not that good. That's why you're afraid. Losers, of course, are afraid because they don't think if they fail, they know that they will. Winners don't have that fear because they know they're going to succeed. Deep down, you know if you're a winner or if you're a loser, says Nietzsche. And so Nietzsche really is writing to the fellow winners. Rise up, man. Don't be a part of this. Don't be a part of this system. Don't go along to go along. Don't be a part of everybody else. Don't do this Judeo-Christian right, wrong, nonsense stuff. Don't follow rules. Be your own person. Think about the contrast, such a beautiful contrast here between Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras, and the next day, Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent. So to tie it back to the Christianity stuff again, and the id and the superego and all of that, right? Mardi Gras, anything goes. There are no rules. Right? There's public nudity, public intoxication. You feel like doing it, you do it. It's all fine because we're overindulging. Why are we overindulging? Because we're all going to give everything up the next day. Lent is the first of 40 days of giving stuff up. Sacrificing. Nietzsche's like, that's pretty stupid. Why sacrifice? Listen to your id more. That's what artists do. That's why Dionysus is the exemplar for the artist. Dionysus, by the way, is Bacchus. Bacchus is king of the Mardi Gras festival. Wine, women, song, and what are all of those things? Those things are all uninhibited. Inhibition begins on Ash Wednesday. And because you're giving it up, that's why you overindulge. Inhibitions are loosened. Rules go away when you're at this artistic, creative, transcendental thing. Rules go out the window when you're intoxicated or when you're high. Rules go out the window when you're talking about certain activities that you're engaging in with other individuals. When you're listening to music, you're sort of transported to a different place. The shaman is transported to a different place, and usually what happens during these shamanistic rituals, well, there's usually some type of intoxication of a type, peyote or something along those lines, some type of substance which inebriates. There's usually dancing, which is very uninhibited, which is why the connection between dancing and those other activities I mentioned previously, without actually mentioning them, because this is YouTube and I don't know who's going to be watching or whatever. So the birth of tragedy then. And so we've got this distinction between Apollo and Dionysian duality. In Apollo, he connects with things like sculpture and architecture, things which have to be thought out ahead of time. You can't necessarily build the most abstract building of all time, because it would probably collapse. That function in some ways has to at least come alongside form with things like architecture. With things like sculpture, the thing will fall apart. That's what Russell's going to highlight, is the intellectual part. Nietzsche's here about, no man, it's the feeling, it's the guts. Nietzsche is a romantic in the philosophical sense. Not a romantic in the, oh, here are some flowers and chocolates, but romantic in the, it's about feeling, it's about guts, it's about your soul. Nietzsche's heavily influenced by the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, who talks about these things as well. Most people know Emerson for the self-reliance bit, and that's an aspect of it. But there's also this connection thing that Russell talks about, that Emerson talks about as well. And that duality is with Nietzsche too. That Nietzsche talks about, yeah, this will to power, the strong individual rising above, that everyone else is going to appreciate when it's too late, after they're gone, their legacy's been left, so on and so forth. But at the same time, what they're doing, this strong individual, is not really individualistic at all. They're not doing it in order to benefit everyone else, but it does happen to benefit everyone else. Everyone benefits from fire. Everyone benefits from computers. Everyone benefits from the music of Mozart and Beethoven. The plays of Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, so on and so forth. Right? Romeo and Juliet, right? Most people have found themselves in those positions. And look, Shakespeare himself, the plays, things like Macbeth, this quest for power, and what would you do to attain it? Interesting stuff. In order to grasp these two tendencies, let us conceive of them as the separate art worlds of dreams and intoxication. That's Dionysus, intoxication. And quite frankly, when we're intoxicated, it doesn't matter who has PhDs and who doesn't. We're all equal. And so that coming together, the quality thing is running alongside this greatness legacy leaving thing. It's a really interesting contrast. He quotes Wagner. Right, Apollo is calm, whereas Dionysus is wild. And so Emerson influences Thoreau. Emerson also influences Nietzsche, and so let's talk about Thoreau for a minute. Right, Thoreau runs away to Walden for about a year and a half. He doesn't stay there forever. runs away for about a year and a half to live life closest to the marrow, to find where the necessities of life. He then goes back to some of the luxuries, but he wants to see, okay, what do I need? And then gains greater appreciation for the things that he wants. And Thoreau says that all good things are wild. His essay, Wild Apples, is fantastic. He talks about the gnarliest apples, the ones that have the most interesting stories to tell. Right? These sheep that have been in scrapes with wolves are much more interesting sheep than the ones who have never left the flock. He's calm. Russell's going to be calm. He's a mathematician, a philosopher, he's British, he's very calm. Nietzsche's not calm. Nietzsche's fiery. The artist should be fiery. The true artist can't decide, you know what, I'm not going to do any art today, I'm going to take the day off. No. You do art when art compels you to do art. Thomas Kincaid can decide, I'm not going to do art today. His art gets turned into puzzles. His art also isn't real art. There's nothing innovative there. Cottages in winter, whoop-de-doo. Representative art, whoop-de-doo. Who cares? Doesn't speak to anything universal. It helps old ladies pass the time putting together the puzzle. Bob Ross, bye-bye friends, and all that. Happy little trees and happy accidents and all that. That's great. You know what it's not? In any art museum. That's what it's not. It's not progressive. Not forward-thinking, not innovative. I mean, little happy trees. It's peaceful, it's relaxing. I typically fall asleep if I try to watch Bob Ross. Or if it's the sound of the knife on the canvas, I think, that I find soothing. But anyway. But it's not forcing me to produce great art. It's not helping me to realize any type of universal truths about anything. Nietzsche would be a fan of someone like Pollock. Hey, let's drizzle and drip and see what happens. Spontaneity. And you know what else Pollock was? A drunkard. Intoxicated, like, all the time. And a womanizer. There you got the wine, the women. I'm sure he probably listened to music when he created the art, too. Wine, women, song, bam, there you go. Anywho. And this dichotomy comes out again on the top of page 731 when he talks about the terror of blissful ecstasy that comes from the innermost depths of man, indeed of nature, the collapse of the principle of individuation that we steal a glimpse into the nature of the Dionysian. Again, we're all drunk, it doesn't matter who's who, we're just all drunk, we're hanging out. There's this blissful ecstasy that comes with terror. Right? People who like roller coasters or haunted houses, right? The scarier the better, the faster the better. The more extreme the better. The closer to death, the better, at least the possibility of death. And so again, to tie it back to Emerson, Emerson then also influenced John Muir, the mountaineer here in the United States, who's basically the reason that we have national parks and so forth. And anyway, he loved climbing mountains because it was so close to death. One wrong step and it's over for you. You were done. And so there's a blissful ecstasy in that terror, right? If you make it to the top and didn't die, whoa, look what I achieved. And look at this great thing that I did. And then this connection then that you have to the wider world and the wider universe because of the vista that you have, the view that you have when you reach the top. Like, whoa, I'm pretty insignificant. But at the same time, I'm pretty significant because I reached this point and didn't die. All these dichotomies are very interesting, especially if we're looking post-Hegelian. There's a blissful ecstasy that wells from terror. There's beauty to be found in tragedy. That's what artists do. They take the tragic and make it beautiful. Beauty in tragedy. Hamlet's tragic, man. And yet it's a beautiful play. Under the charm of the Dionysian, not only is the union between man and man reaffirmed, we're all one, we're all together, just like all lions are together, all giraffes are together. Survival of the fittest, which means the ones that are still here are the fittest, which means there's a connection here. Nietzsche would say, look, we're shooting ourselves in the foot when we give contraceptives to Olympic athletes. These are the biggest, strongest, fastest folks we have. If we want the species to be bigger, stronger, faster, these are exactly the people that we should have hooking up and producing the next generation. But instead, we do things like pump tons of money into nursing homes to keep old people alive. Again, some connections with things like Nazi thinking, eugenics, and so on and so forth, right? Let the old people die, they're not fit anymore anyway. Maybe we can get some good out of them by running some science experiments. Which, by the way, we know a whole lot more about genetics now than we did prior to World War II because of the experiments that the Nazis ran on people. This is not Schrappe justifying it, this is just Schrappe giving facts. Okay. But not only that, but also, right, the eugenics thing, right, they were all about the Olympics, right, in Berlin, and how great the German people were, and look, we're going to win all the gold, and show you what we're doing and how awesome it is. Anyway, so we get this union between man and man that's reaffirmed. So we can see in some way sort of an authentic way of being with others that Heidegger's going to talk about. But nature, which has become alienated, hostile, and subjugated, celebrates once more her reconciliation with her lost son man. So we're also connected to nature itself. Again, that's why the shaman reconnects us with nature, right? Early hunters, it wasn't hunter versus animal. It was hunter becoming the animal in order to hunt it better, right? Because the animal then becomes a part of the person once they eat the animal, and the person will eventually die and, be worm food and be part of the whole food web thing again, so it'll be part of the animal, and so it's this whole connection thing, the circle of life. And I watch a lot of animated movies, but they're deeper than they get credit for, some of them. And there's at least moments here and there that are, man. And so he's very clear here, bottom of 734. He is no longer the artist. He has instead become a work of art. The connection between the artist and the artwork, it's very, very blurry. And here I think about someone like Andy Warhol, right? That his celebrity sort of was his artwork. I mean, yeah, you get the tomato soup cans and the Marilyn Monroes and all of that stuff. But it was who he was that made the art itself desirable, not the art making the person desirable. Artist and artwork coming together. And so Warhol sold way more paintings while he was alive than someone like Van Gogh. Van Gogh, and here again, beauty in the tragic. He was poor, he only sold one painting, right? His brother Theo could only financially support him for so long. And so he's in France, and he's low on funds, and he doesn't have enough money for paint and food. Now, for most of us, we would say, well, you got to buy the food, give up the painting thing. But he can't. He's compelled. He writes in some of his letters to Theo how he wishes he could give it up, but he can't. And so he buys the paint. Yet he's still hungry. So he eats paint. Which he may have already had some mental stuff, and this didn't help anything, obviously, if you're eating paint. And so art, which consumed him from the inside, he now is literally consuming art products. He's consuming paint. Tragic, horrible, but artistically kind of beautiful. Also couldn't afford water. Tap water is not safe to drink in France at this time. That's why everybody buys the bubbled water and all of that stuff. He doesn't have money for that. But he does have a liquid that he has access to. Paint thinner. So he begins to drink that. Shortly after then, he goes out to this particular field that he's been painting every day, every morning. And this morning he has an addition. He takes his easel, his canvas, his paints, all the usual stuff. He also happens to take a revolver with him because he knows he's going to commit suicide. He can't do it anymore. But rather than do it at home, he still has to do it while he's painting. that the art has still consumed him, the art has still overtaken him. That's crazy. That's crazy. Right? At some point, you've got to tell your friend, hey man, give up the art thing and go be a assistant manager someplace. Go get a real job. Go have a family and all of that. Go live life. But the artist is not going to understand that. The true artist can't do that. The true artist is going to be a starving artist rather than sell out. Deep stuff, man. There's so much more that can be said about Nietzsche. But I basically just wanted to kind of present, if there is no God, then what? Well, there's no rules, and you have complete freedom. Then you have power, and you can be like Elsa and Kanye if you're a winner. Most folks aren't winners. Most folks are losers. So they should be content in this community thing, and they should be content following the rules, doing job description things, heck, even believe in this God nonsense. Whatever you gotta do to get through the day, fine. His call is to the winners. Look, don't succumb to that loser lifestyle. Don't succumb to the loser mentality, the slave mentality, the slave morality. And so his stuff on art has a huge connection with what he then talks about with regards to ethics. But for more of that story, take my ethics class. So for next time then, there'll be a video on Russell. Go ahead and read the Russell. And Russell will probably be the last video. I may put something else on the discussion board for Friday. We'll see how it goes. Okay? Stay safe.